Welcome back, warriors and wanderers, to another episode of Full Spectrum Frontiers. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we're diving deep into a topic that's as vital as it is complex: how the United States protects the almighty dollar's value and keeps it on top of the global food chain. Now, you might be wondering, Bennett, why should I care about the dollar's value? Isn't that just something for the suits on Wall Street to worry about? Well, my friends, the strength of the dollar is like the foundation of a house. It's not something you think about every day, but if it crumbles, everything built on top of it goes down with it. Your savings, your investments, heck, even the cost of your morning coffee. All of it is tied to that greenback we all know and love. Today, we're breaking down the full spectrum of strategies the U.S. uses to keep the dollar rock solid and reigning supreme on the global stage. And because this is Full Spectrum Frontiers, you know we're going to explore the good, the bad, and yes, even the ugly sides of this topic. We'll talk about economic policies, global trade, military might, diplomatic chess moves, and the challenges that lie ahead. So buckle up, because by the end of this episode, you're not just going to know why the dollar matters. You're going to feel like you've got a PhD in economic warfare. And don't worry, we'll keep things light and easy to digest. No boring econ lectures here. I promise there'll be a few laughs along the way. After all, what's the point of learning if we can't have a little fun doing it? All right, let's kick things off with the first segment, where we break down the economic pillars that keep the dollar strong. But before we do, remember, this podcast is more than just information. It's a conversation. So, if you find value in today's episode, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and leave a review. Your support helps us keep exploring the frontiers that matter. All right, folks, let's get into it. We're starting with the economic pillars, those bedrock principles that keep the dollar standing tall, even when the global economy starts feeling like a game of Jenga played by a caffeine-addicted squirrel. First up, we've got the Federal Reserve, or as I like to call it, the financial wizard behind the curtain. The Fed isn't just some mysterious entity that decides interest rates like it's picking a card from a deck. It's the cornerstone of the U.S. financial system, pulling the levers that keep inflation in check and the economy humming. Think of the Fed as the guardian of the dollar's value. It's their job to make sure that your hard-earned cash doesn't suddenly turn into monopoly money. Now let's talk about inflation control. Inflation is like that annoying mosquito at a summer barbecue. Small, but capable of ruining everything if left unchecked. The Fed uses tools like interest rates to manage inflation. When inflation starts creeping up, the Fed might raise interest rates, making borrowing more expensive. This cools down spending, which in turn helps keep prices stable. It's a delicate balance, and the Fed has to be careful not to overdo it, or we risk slipping into a recession, a word that makes economists break out in a cold sweat. But it's not just about keeping inflation low. The strength of the dollar is also tied to how well the U.S. economy is performing overall. A strong economy means strong demand for the dollar. When the U.S. economy is firing on all cylinders, investors around the world flock to the dollar like moths to a flame. Why? Because the dollar is seen as a safe bet, especially in turbulent times. It's like the LeBron James of currencies: reliable, resilient, and always a contender. And speaking of contenders, let's not forget about the U.S. debt market. Now, I know what you're thinking. Debt? Isn't that a bad thing? Well, not exactly. U.S. Treasury bonds, which are essentially IOUs from the government, are considered some of the safest investments in the world. When countries like China and Japan buy up U.S. debt, they're not just lending the U.S. money, they're also buying into the stability of the dollar. These bonds are a huge part of what keeps the dollar in high demand globally. But here's the kicker. All of this, interest rates, inflation control, a strong economy, and a stable debt market, rests on the foundation of trust. Trust in the U.S. government, trust in its financial institutions, and trust that the dollar will be worth something tomorrow, next year, and decades from now. Without that trust, the dollar's value would be as shaky as a house of cards in a windstorm. So there you have it, our first look at the economic pillars that hold up the dollar. The Fed, inflation control, economic performance, and the debt market all play their part in keeping that green piece of paper in your wallet strong and valuable. But as with anything, there's a flip side. We've seen what happens when these pillars start to wobble. Cue the 2008 financial crisis, anyone? That's why it's crucial to keep these fundamentals in check. Otherwise, we might find ourselves in a scenario where the dollar's strength is more myth than reality. In the next segment, we're going to shift gears and talk about global trade, how the U.S. uses its economic and political muscle to ensure the dollar remains the go-to currency for international transactions. Trust me, this is where things get really interesting. But before we dive into that, if you're enjoying the ride so far, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us keep pushing the envelope and exploring these critical topics. All right, we've laid down the economic foundations, and now it's time to see how the dollar flexes its muscles on the global stage. Let's talk about global trade, folks, where the dollar isn't just a currency, it's the king, the emperor, the grandmaster of the global chessboard. You see, in the world of international trade, the US dollar is like that universal remote control you wish you had for every device in your living room. It's the default currency for most transactions, from buying oil to trading commodities. But how did the dollar get to sit on the throne while other currencies are left watching from the sidelines? Well, it wasn't by accident, it was by design. Let's start with the big one, the petrodollar system. Picture this, it's the 1970s. Disco is in full swing, and the world's oil market is in chaos. Enter the petrodollar agreement, where the U.S. struck a deal with Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing nations to sell their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. In return, the U.S. promised military protection and economic cooperation. This move was like planting the dollar's flag in the middle of the global oil supply. Suddenly, if you wanted oil, you needed dollars. This wasn't just a win for the U.S., it was a checkmate. The petrodollar system created a massive, ongoing demand for U.S. currency. Countries all over the world needed to hold dollars to buy oil, which meant the dollar became the dominant currency in international reserves. It's like forcing everyone at the poker table to buy chips only from you. Pretty soon, you're the one running the game. But it doesn't stop at oil. The dollar's dominance extends to global trade in general. Imagine you're a company in Brazil buying electronics from Japan. What currency are you likely to use? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the US dollar. Why? Because it's stable, it's reliable, and everyone knows what it's worth. The dollar is like that friend who always shows up on time and never flakes out. It's dependable, and in the world of global trade, that's worth its weight in gold. And let's not forget about the role of U.S. economic influence. Trade agreements, tariffs, and sanctions. These are the tools in America's economic toolbox. When the U.S. strikes a trade deal, it often ensures that the dollar is the currency of choice. And if a country steps out of line, economic sanctions can be slapped down faster than a speeding ticket in a school zone. These sanctions often restrict access to the U.S. financial system, which is a massive blow considering the global economy's reliance on the dollar. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the flip side of this influence. Some countries aren't too thrilled about the dollar's dominance. Nations like Russia and China have been pushing to reduce their reliance on the dollar, even setting up alternative payment systems to bypass the U.S. financial network. And let's not forget the rise of digital currencies, which could one day challenge the dollar's throne. But for now, the dollar is still the heavyweight champ, and it doesn't look like it's giving up the title anytime soon. So, what does all this mean for us regular folks? Well, the dollar's dominance in global trade keeps our currency strong and our economy stable. But it's a double-edged sword. If the dollar ever loses its grip on global trade, we could see some serious economic turbulence. Think bumpy plane ride during a thunderstorm kind of turbulence. That's why it's so important for the U.S. to maintain its influence on the world stage. In the next segment, we're going to explore another pillar of the dollar's dominance: military might. How does the U.S. military reinforce the dollar's power? And what role does dollar diplomacy play in this grand strategy? Stick around because we're about to get into the nuts and bolts of how America's armed forces and its currency are more closely linked than you might think. Now that we've explored the economic and trade aspects of the dollar's dominance, let's talk about another critical piece of the puzzle: military might. You might be wondering, Bennett, what does the U.S. military have to do with the dollar? Well, my friends, the connection between the two is as deep as a Navy salvage driver's dive. Picture this: the U.S. military is like the ultimate insurance policy for the dollar. It's no secret that the United States has the most powerful military in the world. With bases spread across the globe, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, the U.S. military isn't just about defense. It's about projecting power. And that power extends to the realm of economics. Let's break it down. The presence of U.S. military bases around the world serves as a constant reminder of American influence. These bases aren't just there for show. They're strategic points that help maintain stability in key regions. And when there's stability, there's confidence. Confidence in the U.S., in its ability to protect its interests, and in the dollar as the global currency of choice. Take the Persian Gulf, for example. It's a region rich in oil, a commodity that, as we've discussed, is traded predominantly in dollars. The U.S. military's presence in this region isn't just about safeguarding energy supplies. It's about ensuring that the global oil trade continues to flow through the channels that favor the dollar. When you control the stability of a region as crucial as the Persian Gulf, You also control the confidence that the world has in your currency. But it's not just about strategic locations. The U.S. military also plays a key role in what I like to call dollar diplomacy. This is where the U.S. uses its military and economic power in tandem to influence global events and protect its financial interests. When the U.S. engages in military operations or forms alliances, there's often an economic component involved. Sanctions, aid packages, and trade deals are frequently tied to the dollar, reinforcing its status as the world's leading currency. Let's not forget that the U.S. defense budget is funded in dollars, and the sheer scale of that budget, larger than the next 10 countries combined, underscores the strength of the U.S. economy and the dollar itself. Other nations know that the U.S. has the economic clout to back up its military commitments, and this further entrenches the dollar's position on the world stage. Now, while this symbiotic relationship between the dollar and the military is powerful, it's not without its challenges. Military engagements can be costly, both in terms of finances and global reputation. Prolonged conflicts or military interventions can strain the U.S. economy, potentially leading to inflation or increased national debt, both of which can weaken the dollar. It's a delicate balancing act, and one misstep could send shock waves through the global economy. So, there you have it. The U.S. military isn't just a force for defense. It's a pillar of the dollar's global dominance. The strength of America's armed forces plays a crucial role in maintaining the stability and confidence that keep the dollar on top. But, as with anything in life, there's a price to pay. The challenge lies in managing that power wisely, ensuring that the military's role in supporting the dollar doesn't tip the scales too far in the wrong direction. In the next segment, we're going to take a closer look at the diplomatic side of things, how the U.S. uses its influence in global institutions and through international agreements to keep the dollar at the center of the world's economy. This is where the chess game of global diplomacy really comes into play, so stick around. Now it's time to dive into the diplomatic arena, where the art of negotiation, persuasion, and sometimes a bit of arm twisting come into play to keep the dollar as the reigning champion of global currencies. Diplomacy, folks, is the chess game of international relations, and the United States plays it like a grandmaster. At the heart of this game is the U.S. strategy to shape global economic policies in ways that reinforce the dollar's supremacy. And let me tell you, it's a game that requires both finesse and force. Let's start with the big players, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. These institutions are like the referees in the global economic arena, and the U.S. holds a significant amount of influence over them. The U.S. is the largest contributor to these organizations, which means it has a big say in how they operate. When the IMF or World Bank extends loans or financial assistance to countries in need, those funds are often tied to economic reforms that favor the dollar. It's like lending your buddy a toolbox, but only if he promises to use it to fix things your way. This influence isn't just about lending money. It's about setting the rules of the game. The U.S. uses its clout in these institutions to push for policies that encourage the use of the dollar in global trade and finance. This ensures that the dollar remains the default currency for everything from cross-border transactions to central bank reserves. But the U.S. doesn't just rely on global institutions to maintain the dollar's dominance. It also uses bilateral and multilateral trade agreements. These agreements often include provisions that favor the use of the dollar, whether through trade settlements, pricing mechanisms, or even legal frameworks that protect dollar-denominated investments. Think of these agreements as contracts that lock in the dollar's role in global commerce. Now let's talk about sanctions, a tool that's as much a part of U.S. diplomacy as a diplomat's handshake. When the U.S. imposes sanctions on a country, it often restricts that country's access to the U.S. financial system, which, as we know, is heavily dollar-centric. This effectively cuts off the sanctioned country from the global economy, given the dollar's dominance in international trade. It's a powerful way to enforce compliance with U.S. policies and to remind the world who's boss when it comes to the global financial system. However, it's important to recognize that this diplomatic power can sometimes lead to pushback. Countries like China and Russia have been actively seeking to reduce their reliance on the dollar, creating alternative payment systems, and even trading in their own currencies. These moves are like setting up a rival chessboard, one that could, over time, chip away at the dollar's dominance. But for now, these efforts are more about hedging bets than toppling the king. So, what's the takeaway here? The U.S. uses diplomacy as a critical tool to protect and promote the dollar's position on the world stage. By influencing global institutions, crafting strategic trade agreements, and leveraging sanctions, the U.S. ensures that the dollar remains at the heart of the global economy. But this isn't a game without risks. As more countries explore alternatives to the dollar, the U.S. will need to be even more strategic in how it plays its diplomatic hand. In the next and final segment, we're going to take a look at the challenges and threats facing the dollar's dominance. We'll explore the rise of digital currencies, economic competition from China, and what the future might hold for the greenback. It's going to be a deep dive into the uncertainties and potential shifts that could reshape the global financial landscape, so don't go anywhere. We've covered a lot of ground today, from economic pillars to military might, from global trade to diplomatic maneuvering. But now it's time to look ahead to the challenges and threats that could shake the dollar's throne and reshape the global financial landscape. Let's start with the elephant in the room: digital currencies. The rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and state-backed digital currencies is one of the most significant financial developments of our time. These digital assets offer a decentralized, borderless alternative to traditional currencies, including the dollar. While they're still in their early stages, the potential for digital currencies to disrupt the current financial system is real. China, for instance, has been aggressively pushing the development and adoption of its own digital currency, the digital yuan. Unlike cryptocurrencies, which are decentralized and often anonymous, the digital yuan is fully controlled by the Chinese government. This gives China a powerful tool to promote its currency on the global stage, especially in regions where it's seeking to expand its influence. If the digital yuan gains widespread acceptance, it could challenge the dollar's dominance in international trade and finance. It's like watching a new contender step into the ring, one that could change the rules of the game. But digital currencies aren't the only threat. let's talk about economic competition, specifically the rise of China as a global economic powerhouse. China's economy has been growing at an impressive rate for decades, and it's now the second largest in the world. With this growth comes increased clout on the world stage, and China has been using its economic muscle to push for greater use of the yuan in international trade. The Belt and Road Initiative for gas, for example, is a massive infrastructure project that spans multiple continents, and it's being financed in part with Chinese currency. This is a strategic move to increase the yuan's global footprint and reduce reliance on the dollar. But it's not just China that poses a challenge. Russia, too, has been actively seeking to decrease its dependence on the dollar, especially in the wake of U.S. sanctions. Moscow has been building up its reserves of gold and other currencies, and it's been exploring alternative payment systems to bypass the U.S. financial network. This isn't just about economics, it's about geopolitics. By reducing its reliance on the dollar, Russia is trying to insulate itself from U.S. influence and assert its own power on the global stage. Now, let's bring this back to the home front. The U.S. isn't immune to internal challenges that could weaken the dollar's position. Rising national debt, political gridlock, and economic inequality are all factors that could undermine confidence in the U.S. economy, and by extension, the dollar. If investors start to see the U.S. as a riskier bet, they might begin to diversify away from the dollar, which could weaken its value and its role as the world's reserve currency. It's like having a crack in the foundation of a house. If it's not addressed, it could eventually bring the whole structure down. But before we start panicking, let's remember that the dollar has faced challenges before, and it's come out on top. The U.S. economy is still the largest in the world, and the dollar is deeply embedded in the global financial system. While these challenges are real, the U.S. has the tools, the resources, and the resilience to adapt and overcome. It's not just about maintaining the status quo. It's about evolving with the times, finding new ways to strengthen the dollar's position, and ensuring that it remains the world's preferred currency for decades to come. So, what does the future hold for the dollar? The truth is, no one can say for certain. The global financial landscape is changing rapidly, and new technologies and geopolitical shifts are creating both opportunities and risks. But one thing is clear. The U.S. can't afford to be complacent. It needs to continue to innovate, to lead, and to adapt to ensure that the dollar remains the cornerstone of the global economy. As we wrap up this deep dive into the future of the dollar, let's remember that challenges are also opportunities. The rise of digital currencies, the growth of China, and the push for economic diversification are all forces that could reshape the global economy in ways we can't yet fully predict. But with the right strategies and a forward-thinking approach, the U.S. can navigate these challenges and continue to lead on the global stage. And that, my friends, is a wrap on today's episode of Full Spectrum Frontiers. We've journeyed through the economic pillars that hold up the dollar, the power of global trade, the might of the U.S. military, the strategic moves in diplomacy, and the challenges that lie ahead. I hope you found this deep dive as enlightening as I have. Remember, the strength of the dollar isn't just about numbers on a screen. It's about the strategies, the policies, and the people who work tirelessly behind the scenes to keep it strong. It's a complex and ever-evolving story, and one that we all have a stake in. If you enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, share this podcast with your friends, and leave us a review. Your support helps us keep exploring these critical topics and bringing you the insights you need to stay informed and ahead of the curve. And as always, if you've got questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, don't hesitate to reach out. This is a conversation, and I'm here to make sure we're exploring the frontiers that matter most to you. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what you know. This is Bennett Tanton, signing off from Full Spectrum Frontiers. See you on the next episode.
Yeah. It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we see in the gods. We've been low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never. And when the world gets a little too hard, wipe your eyes, put away your sorrow. When it's war, I'll be leading the charge, and I'll be still fighting for you tomorrow. Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars or Venus, stand in front of every one of them rocks they slinging and being shit.
Your shield, yeah. In the fiercest battle, I'll defend you. From all these arrows in the sword I will keep you from danger. Let me be your shield. You may be facing tribulation, but don't let it get you down. What I'm saying may take patience, but you're gonna make it out. I scorched my own 2 feet to pull you to say